Chapter 9. Morning mist curled around her feet as Reverend Yerkes opened his Bible. A bitter wind sighed through the red bud's winding branches, its magenta blooms trembling against a gray sky. Dinah stood at her mother's left side, Daniel on the other side. Three of them gathered around the hole in the ground beside Lydia's grave. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. The Reverend read, steady and fervent. Dinah clenched her jaw, the high collar of her black dress choking the life out of her. What purpose? What reason? A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. She fought to keep her quivering lip pressed into a tight, emotionless line, the eyes of the congregation boring into her back. They tiptoed around her, murmured their condolences, and treated her like she was made of glass, like she was balanced on the tip of a knife, and the slightest breeze might push her over the edge. So what if it was true? She didn't want their pity, their sympathetic stares or wagging tongues eager to gossip about her latest misfortune. She just wanted to be left alone. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to kill. Dinah's gaze darted to the Reverend's moving mouth. She clasped her gloved hands so tightly that they hurt, the hollowness inside her bubbling like an empty pot, suddenly filled with boiling water. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. Rend, hate, war. Traitorous tears burned in her eyes. If not now, when? Reverend Yerkes closed his Bible and looked at the mourners. Everyone from church had come. People from town, their neighbors, August's family, and Ophelia's parents. The Reverend's white brows drew together. Jesse Solomon Hance was a brave, kind man. In our nation's time of war, he fought for peace, to preserve this union. He was a man of honor and principle, a faithful provider, a devoted husband and father. In the presence of evil, he did not cower. He died as he lived, confronting the enemy head-on, protecting his family. May we all face life's trials with such unshakable courage. The charismatic conviction with which he spoke had always inspired and uplifted her. But today his words buried Dinah under a mountain of shame. She didn't feel brave. She felt lost, torn in two directions. Daniel had urged her mother to sell the farm and invited them to join him in New York. Dinah had no doubt that her mother would give in. And then what? The last place she wanted to move to was a big city, but the thought of being separated from her family terrified her. Where would she go? What would she do? Though we as a church and a community mourn this tragic loss, we can take comfort in the knowledge that today and forevermore, Jesse is with our Lord in paradise, Reverend Yerkes concluded. Dinah only felt a gut-wrenching ache. He asked them if they would like to say a few words, and her mother gave no answer, her devastated features shrouded by her rippling veil. Daniel shook his bowed head, his eyes downcast. Reverend Yerkes thanked those who had attended the service and dismissed them. As the congregation dispersed, her mother sank to her knees, weeping as two men tossed the first shovels of dirt onto her father's coffin. Daniel knelt beside her and wrapped his arm around her bent shoulders. Dinah couldn't bear it. She walked to the edge of the hill and gazed upon the house and the barn her father had built with his own hands, the fences and the chicken coop. Cardinal, Belle, and Dusty grazed in the field below, but Sarge stood like a statue, his head high and his ears pointed toward them. He knew. He'd probably seen it happen. If she'd done something, anything differently. Dinah? She turned and discovered Ophelia's parents standing behind her. A lump stuck in her throat. She hadn't spoken to them in well over a year. "I'm so sorry for your loss," said Mrs. Larson in her thick Swedish accent. Wringing her hands, she ventured closer, her black skirt billowing in the wind. "Is it true? Sal Valentin did this?" She whispered his name like a curse, a taboo. Dinah nodded. Mrs. Larson gave a quiet gasp of horror, and Mr. Larson ran an anguished hand over his bearded face. "That monster should have been dealt with 10 years ago." She spat. "We waited so long, pleaded, but Marshal Garrett never cared to do anything about it." Dinah remembered him less than fondly. A man of complacence and self-indulgence who'd been replaced by Marshal Tupper 5 years back. The posse from Abilene found nothing but an abandoned campsite. Mr. Larson complained. Marshal Tupper should step in before it's too late. He told me he's putting a posse together, but he's waiting on someone, Dinah said. An old friend of his. Mrs. Larson huffed and put her hands on her hips. Well, he'd better hurry, or there won't be a trail to follow. Mr. Larson greeted Reverend Yerkes with a nod as he came over to them. Harold? Eric, the Reverend replied with a kind smile. Sophia, may I have a word with Miss Hance? Of course, said Mr. Larson. He pressed his hand to his wife's back and guided her away. Reverend Yerkes clasped his hands behind him and heaved a sigh. Dinah, I know telling you this won't ease the pain of your father's passing, but I want you to know that you and your family aren't alone in this. If there's anything you need, anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask. Ever since she'd spoken to Roach, she'd wrestled with the question of who'd paid their debt. Though he'd told her the person wanted to remain anonymous, her curiosity had become unbearable. Dinah took a breath and met his keen blue gaze. Actually, there's something I've been wanting to ask you about, Reverend. 3 days ago, someone paid the debt we've been struggling with, but I don't know who. His eyes widened, his lips parting in surprise. Was it you? She ventured. He shook his head. No, not me. But that's wonderful news, Dinah. Wonderful news. It wasn't him. She'd been so sure. If not him or the congregation, who? Most people didn't have that much money lying around. Dinah's heart sank as she looked toward the house again. She supposed it didn't matter. It didn't change the fact that she was about to lose her home. Is there something else on your mind? Reverend Yerkes prompted patiently. Dinah hesitated. How honest should she be? Those verses you read? They spoke of a time to hate, to kill. She swallowed hard. Sal Valentin took Ophelia from me. Now my father. I hate him. I want someone to make him pay. I want to see him hang. Dinah met the Reverend's wizened gaze. Am I wrong for feeling this way? He studied her, considering carefully. There is such a thing as righteous anger. Seeking justice is good, but hatred poisons the soul. We're called to love our enemies. The wicked are God's to punish. But he acts through us. He uses us to accomplish his will. Yes, he said, which is why we have laws and men who enforce them. Trust Marshal Tupper. He knows what he's doing. She shook her head and turned from him. The law's been after him a long time, Reverend. I've got no reason to believe things will turn out any different than they have before. They might, Dinah. They might. But if they don't, remember this. No man can outrun his sin. Not even Sal Valentin. When Dinah arrived at the marshal's office, a Kentucky saddler was hitched out front. A striking bay with a blaze. As she tied Cardinal at the opposite rail and headed for the steps, the saddler's curious eyes followed her, one brown and the other blue. She wondered if he belonged to Marshal Tupper. I passed through Abilene on my way here, a man said as she pushed open the door. Town's burned and shot all to pieces. 8 men dead. He's getting worse, Lee. The marshal shook his head and glanced up from his chair. Miss Hance, come on in. There's someone I want you to meet. The stranger standing at his desk turned to face her, tall and lean. He looked to be her father's age. A gray felt hat sat atop his head, a pair of cat-like eyes glinting under the brim. He wore a matching frock coat over an emerald vest and a black puff tie, his right leg encased up to his thigh in a leather prosthetic. This is Jasper Lawrence, the friend I told you about. Lawrence tipped his hat, the neatly trimmed edges of a brown mustache rising with the curve of his lips as he smiled at her. Pleasure to meet you, miss, he said with the slow drawl of a southern gentleman. Lawrence, this is Dinah Hance. She's been a big help to me these past 2 days. Gave me drawings and descriptions of the gang members who would have been in Abilene that morning. Mind if I take a look? Lawrence asked. Marshal Tupper grabbed a stack of papers from the shelf behind him and slid them across his desk. Have at 'em. Dinah's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I'm no artist, sir, but I tried my best. Lawrence picked up her drawings and rifled through them, reading the names she'd written under the portraits. Marcus Crane, Joseph Gray. Where there's one, the other's not far behind. Her brow furrowed. He spoke of them as if he knew them. You've seen him before? Once or twice, he mumbled. Are you a lawman? He's a manhunter, the marshal answered. Been at it a long time. He's one of the best there is. You flatter me, Marshal. Lawrence's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing as he stared at her sketch of Remy. "The Guidry boys have joined up with Valentin." Marshall Tupper frowned. "I ain't heard of 'em. What's the story on 'em? Remy Guidry's got $3,000 on his head down in Louisiana. Started robbing folk when he was a kid, and I guess he took a liking to it. So did his two brothers. He fled the state after he killed the woman." The story didn't surprise her, but it frightened her. Dinah pressed her gloved fingers to her spine. The lashes still burnt when she touched them. "Sounds like a nasty piece of work," the marshal remarked. Lawrence looked up from the drawings and met her gaze. "You saw all these men?" "They went to her house to hide," Marshal Tupper explained. "Killed her father." Hearing someone mention it again recalled the crushing reality of it. Dinah felt like she was going to be sick. Understanding dawned on Lawrence's face. "My condolences. You're fortunate to be alive, Miss Hance." "I don't feel so lucky," she muttered. "Well, I do have some good news for you, Miss Hance," the marshal said. "I got a telegram reporting a potential sighting of Joseph Gray in Great Bend. Lawrence and I are taking 6 men out in the first train tomorrow." Excitement surged in her, feral and feverish. Dinah dared not voice her desire aloud, but a secret part of her desperately wished she could go with them, that she could stare into Joseph's eyes when he had nowhere left to run, when he got what he deserved. "Thank you, Marshal. Thank you for doing this." "I told you I'd get him, Miss Hance, and I aim to do just that." She unfastened his halter, and Cardinal sauntered out into the pasture. Dinah latched the gate and trudged up the sloping path, past the oak tree and the clucking chickens, the weather as saturnine as her spirit. She didn't doubt Marshal Tupper's competence. If anyone could track them down, he could. But finding the gang was only half the job. Sal Valentin had never been caught, never been arrested. He'd killed every man who tried to put him behind bars, and she couldn't shake the fear that the marshal and his posse would meet the same bloody fate. "Where have you been?" Dinah spun to see her mother sitting on the porch steps, still in her funeral dress, her hair in a wind-tousled chignon. "I went to see the marshal again." "And?" her mother prompted. "He's got a lead. He's leaving with a posse first thing tomorrow." "Good." Her mother sighed and shifted, her hands gripping her knees. "Dinah, I need to talk to you about something. I know now's a bad time, but there'll never be a good one." Warily, Dinah approached her. Her mother drew a deep breath and met her gaze. "I don't know who paid our debt or why, but it feels like a sign, a chance to start over." "Oh, don't look at me like that, Dinah." "He hasn't been in the ground a day, and you're ready to throw it all away?" she exclaimed with a wave of her arm. "He gave his life for us, not this farm," her mother asserted, pulling herself to her feet. "We can't manage it without him. Even if we could, I don't want that for you, and neither would he. You've been stuck here long enough because of what that gang did to us." "Don't pretend this is about me," Dinah growled. Daniel strode out onto the porch, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on?" "You just couldn't stay away, could you?" she fumed, glaring up at him. "Dinah," her mother scolded with a pained expression. Undeterred, he came down the stairs and took an imploring step toward her. "I know what this house means to you, this land." "No, you don't," Dinah snapped, straining to speak past the lump in her throat. "You never did." He sighed in exasperation. "Aren't you tired of this violence? Don't you want to live somewhere safe?" "I want to live somewhere free." Daniel huffed. "How can you hate a place you've never been?" "I've seen enough of it right here in Salina." "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Dinah," he persisted. He came closer and added quietly, "Mama's been through enough. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the people we love." "What do you know of sacrifice?" she challenged. Her blistering rage had devoured the fuse of her patience, and all that remained was the dynamite. "I'm the one who stayed. If you hadn't left us, he might still be alive." Daniel swallowed, her venomous retort effectively silencing him. Blinded by tears, she turned and stormed toward the barn. "Dinah!" her mother called. "Go!" she cried, wheeling to face her. "Go if that's what you want, but you're going without me." Tears splashed onto the picture in Dinah's shaking hands, their smiling faces staring back at her. Being the taller one, she was seated in a chair, Ophelia standing behind her with a mischievous grin. Ever since that day, she'd kept that photograph buried at the bottom of a drawer, Now, Dinah placed it in the saddlebag where she'd stuffed an extra shirt and skirt. The other she'd packed full of canned provisions and ammunition. She buckled her father's gun belt around her hips, his Colt .45 in the holster. His brown Stetson sat on the patterned quilt at the end of her bed. Mocking her, a storm raged inside her as she reached down and gently picked up the hat. Reverend Yerkes was right. Her father faced his fears head-on, running into danger when others fled, putting everyone else ahead of himself, despite the things he'd seen and suffered. All I do is hide and ignore. And where had that gotten her? She'd been passive long enough. The least I can do is go down fighting. I owe him that much. Dinah took a deep breath, pushed her father's hat onto her head, and it fit. Fresh tears sprang to her eyes, but she blinked them back. She went over to her desk, opened her inkwell, and dipped her steel-tipped pen. Revenge ain't very Christian, I know, but my soul can't rest until his is in hell. I'll hunt him till kingdom come if that's what it takes. Dinah put down her pen and closed the inkwell. She glanced at her Bible. Heart clenching, she straightened and returned to her bed, leaving it on the corner of her desk. She slung her rifle across her back, threw the saddlebags over her shoulder, and went to the window. As quietly as she could, Dinah raised it and climbed out onto the porch roof. She crept along the shingled surface, careful not to lose her footing. The sun hadn't yet risen, the moon an ivory sliver in the sky. A cold breeze stirred Dinah's neckerchief and tossed her unbound curls as she inched to the roof's edge. It was a risky plan, but she was convinced that the house's squeaking stairs and creaking doors would have betrayed her. Balancing on the precarious slant, she slid the saddlebags off her shoulder, held them out over the yard, and let them fall. The cans clanged when they hit the ground, and Dinah winced, hoping the crickets masked the clatter of the impact. Slowly, she turned around and maneuvered herself into position, hanging from the roof by her gloved fingers. She dropped into the grass, her knees nearly buckled, but she managed to stay on her feet. Dinah breathed a sigh of relief. She fetched and settled Cardinal in the darkness of the barn. He craned his neck to look at her, his soft eyes watching with concern. Somehow he always knew when something was wrong. She let go of the tightened cinch and wrapped her arms around his neck. Shutting her eyes tight, Dinah clung to him, trusting that his steady strength would keep her upright. He rested his head against her back, and she fell to pieces all over again. She missed her father so much, and she ached for one last chance to tell him how dearly she loved him. How could she leave her mother? Leave home? Leave everything she'd ever known behind? If you don't leave her, she'll leave you. Wiping away her tears, Dinah led Cardinal out of the barn and swung into the saddle. She walked him down the sloping path, gazing up at the oak's towering silhouette and bidding silent goodbyes to the horses and the cattle and the land she loved. When she reached a safe distance from the house, she urged Cardinal into a gallop, riding west towards Salina.